High fly ball into right field. She is gone. In a year that has been so improbable, the impossible has happened. This one by Mattingly. Oh, hang on to the roof. Goodbye home run. Don Mattingly. Tuck waits one. Deep left field. Down the line. That ball is out of here. Out of here.
Welcome back to another episode of TableSetters covering all things Major League Baseball. As always, I'm Steve, joined with my tag team partner, Devin. What's going on, man?
What's going on, dude? I want to start off the episode by saying a belated happy birthday to you. All our TableSetter listeners, go ahead and wish Steve a happy birthday. How was it? How was your day? Good one?
It was good, very low-key. Started a new job, so it's been getting back into the groove after the holidays, going to bed early, so made the most of it, did work on the day, but hopefully going to be celebrating this weekend, watching some of the playoff games. That's the best part about my birthday weekend was always going to be wild card weekend for football around one of the weekends near my birthday. So this weekend, obviously the Saturday, we're going to be going out, watch the games, but Sunday, very stressful with my Packers going into Philadelphia. A little bit injured. Christian Watson now done for the year, and Jordan Love. Obviously, we saw what happened with the elbow on top of the helmet against the Bears, and the Bears lost. The Bears lost for the first time in 16 games. So Packers limping to the playoffs. But the last time they limped into the playoffs, Packers walked away with a Super Bowl. So we'll see.
I mean, I'd be happy if you guys can take down Philly. Do we know if Jalen Hurts is playing? I know, like last time I heard, he still hasn't cleared protocol. That would change everything.
Yes, I believe that it is in question. Maybe that is a gamesmanship thing for Philadelphia to make sure, but he is in concussion protocol as it is there. But, I think they did cut a reserve QB, so it does show that Jalen Hurts is on his way back. So if you read the tea leaves, it seems like you can probably understand that he's going to be there. But if he doesn't play, it changes everything. And I understand Jordan Love, they took him out of caution, but Jalen Hurts is, the offense ticks with him. Obviously, Saquon Barkley has been a revelation this year, but Jalen Hurts is the Philadelphia Eagles offense.
No doubt about it. And just to get back to your birthday real quick, are you feeling your age yet? Like, has that hit where you're like, I feel every bit of these years old that I am?
Yeah, definitely. When I woke up, it was someday during the holiday break, and I don't even know what we did. Maybe been taking down Christmas decorations. Lifted up something weird, woke up, my lower back was in pain, and I've been sleeping with a heating pad for a bit. So yes, Devin, every bit of the 36 years old I'm feeling.
You know what? I think years ago, I think it was Sammy Sosa was like out for a few games, and the reason was because he like sneezed and blew his back out. And at the time, I don't know how old I was, but not very old. And I think it was like, oh, this is ridiculous. Like this guy like is out because he sneezed too hard. Like it's definitely a made up reason. I'll be honest, man. I've hurt myself sneezing at least once, probably more than one time. So Sammy Sosa, I know you apologized to us recently, all of us fans. I want to extend an apology to Sammy Sosa for that, misnomer I gave him.
Well, dude, I mean, I could spend all day talking about how the back is the fulcrum of your body. If your back is hurting, whether it's upper, lower, mid back, whatever it is, it can ruin your day, dude. You can't do anything. So I empathize with Sammy Sosa's plight that he was going through. And yeah, you owe him a fucking apology. Come on.
I gave it to him. He's got it.
So he apologized to us, and here we are apologizing to them. And we apologize to you for going off on a tangent to start the episode. We're going to get into the beat of the order, of course, but we're going to just do our normal housekeeping here. If you want to support the show, please follow us on IG and on the X Machine as well, at TableSetters Pod. Leave a 5-star review. A lot of you guys have done that over the holiday season, and we are very thankful for that. But if you can, tell a friend about the show. If you like baseball and you want to talk about baseball, this is a conversation starter. So you can say to your friend, did you hear what they said on TableSetters? And away you go.
Yeah, man, we're on YouTube now. So again, as we told you last week, if you want to see our pretty faces and try to guess how old we are when we're talking about our ages, you got to bring it up on YouTube and give it a shot.
With that being said, we're getting to our opening say, and we both have the same opening say, and we're going to get right into it. All right, so if you did follow us on the X Machine, you saw that Devin was teasing this all day today, especially when the news report dropped about Pete Alonso, and he's been on the tip of all of our tongues for quite some time at this point during this offseason, wondering where he will wind up taking ABs in the 2025 season. And Scott Boras made some headlines here, Devin, where he's reportedly using Prince Fielder's 9-year, $214 million contract as a comparison for what Pete Alonso should get in free agency. So Jeff Passan came out of there, and obviously Bob Nightingale was involved in this as well. And since the last time we got this news, there is conversation that the Mets and Alonso are likely to reunite on a shorter deal since we've talked about this. But the revelation came out that this $214 million deal that Prince Fielder signed all the way back in 2012 is the comparison. And I will certainly get into my take on this, but I'll let you lead the way, obviously, as the Met fan on this show, how you felt because of, I mean, where to even start, whether it be Alonso's performance dip or where he's going, his age 30 season compared to where Prince Fielder was. It's a conversation waiting to be had.
Yeah, so I'll start by saying this. This is going to hurt me more than it's going to hurt Pete here. So it's going to hurt me to kind of go poke holes in his value here. It feels like an arbitration hearing when you're arguing against your own player to try to get the money down. Kind of an awkward situation. I love Pete, and I do want him back. Okay, I do. But this deal, I mean, is to me an awful comparison. You just alluded to the age, so let's start with that. Something simple here. Prince, when he signed that deal after the 2011 season, was going into his age 28 season. Pete is going into his age 30 season. Doesn't sound like a lot. It's a pretty big difference. All right, being in your late 20s and going into your 30s, especially as a first baseman. The second thing I'll say, and this is interesting. The Prince Fielder it's a weird one to use because it almost, the contract and how that contract went almost argues against itself. Because if you look at how those 9 years went, first of all, he didn't even finish the 9 years. He had 2 good years in Detroit, and then ended up in Texas. So didn't last very long in Detroit anyway. And once he went to Texas, it kind of all fell apart statistically, health-wise. And there have been a lot of other first base contracts, whether it be Albert Pujols with the Angels, even Miguel Cabrera with the Tigers, that just have not aged well. Okay, so that's the simple part of the argument. What I want to get into here as well is, I think when you're going into free agency for the first time, maybe the most important thing is how you do in your walk year. Right. And maybe even how you do the year before your walk year. So let's say the last 1 or 2 years before you're a free agent. Unfortunately for Pete Alonso, I'm not saying they were awful years, but in his career, his last 2 seasons before free agency were the worst seasons he's had. Okay. If I dig into it here, there's some good mixed in with the bad in both of these years, for sure. It was not all bad news. But when you look at it, and then compare it to Prince Fielder in his walk years, you're going to see some things that jump out. Okay, so this past year, actually, let's go back to 2023 for Pete, because to me, this was, he hit 217 in 2023. I never thought of Pete Alonso as a guy that was going to hit that low. That's when he starts feeling a little more like the CJ Crones and the Adam Dunns of the world than a Pete Alonso, who, when he came up, he was hitting over 50 home runs, but he was also a guy that could, a lot of those home runs were line drives up the middle that just went because of how damn strong he is. So the average dipping down to 217 in 2023 was a problem. Interestingly enough, he still had great power numbers and RBI numbers. 46 home runs, 118 RBIs. I mean, imagine if you could bring the average up a little bit. 21 doubles as well. This past year is a very interesting year because I think the playoffs gave some fans a little bit of short-term memory. I'm going to tell you what I mean in a minute. He batted 240 this year, so got the average a little bit further up. The interesting part and the slightly concerning part, he hit 34 home runs, which to most players, that's not concerning. That's great. But for him, I mean, a little bit concerning to see the power dip a little bit. Only 88 RBIs. 31 doubles, though, which is the most in his career. So there are some bright spots you can find in this, and I'm sure Scott Boras is finding all the bright spots he possibly can. Before I get into what I was alluding to with the playoffs clouding some people's judgment here, I want to get into Prince Fielder and look at his last 2 years in Milwaukee before signing the huge deal in Detroit. In 2011, the year before he left, he was an all-star and third in the MVP race. he hit, let me get this right, make sure I'm looking in the right spot here.
I have it in front of me if you want it.
I got it. So he hit 38 home runs, 120 RBIs, and he batted 299. Like that's a big difference between these two. Like the average was not down. He's almost a 300 hitter with those power numbers. The year before that, he hit 261, 32 home runs, 83 RBIs. So like to me, that's a better season. The other thing that I think makes the biggest difference between these two players in those years before their free agency, Pete Alonso hit a gigantic home run against Devin Williams, obviously, to basically get out of the defeat and find a victory for the Mets. And that was as clutch of a home run as you could possibly hit. I can't argue that. But I see people on Twitter now arguing to kind of give Pete whatever he wants. Some people saying like he's proven he can be a clutch hitter in New York, like, and there's not a lot of people that can do that. And that is what's making me think people have a little bit of short-term memory. So if we go on Fangraphs, and one of my favorite splits to look at is your high leverage situations. I tweeted recently about Jurickson Profar and how bananas his numbers were in a positive way in high leverage situations this past year. So Pete, if you go back to the regular season, the opposite was being said about Pete. He was struggling in clutch situations all year long, and it seemed like he was thinking about his free agency every time he got up at bat with men on base, which maybe is why the RBI numbers for the first time in a while didn't get to 100, didn't even get into the 90s this past year, despite being super durable and playing almost every game. You think those RBI numbers should be up a little bit more. So in high leverage situations this year, he hit 196. Let's see, 196. 13 RBIs, only one home run in high leverage situations in the regular season. The year before that, he hit 200. So this is not a one-year thing in high leverage situations. 4 home runs that year, 20 RBIs. So a little better on the RBI numbers and the home run numbers. And if I look at Prince Fielder now, since that is the comparison we have decided to make, or Scott Boras apparently, reportedly, has decided to make, in that 2011 year, high leverage situations, 351 hitter. That jumps off the page. That would be my main argument in that season before becoming a free agent. So I love Pete. Honestly, the most basic argument you can have against it is like there's almost no first basemen that are going to get a 9-year deal right now. It's a completely different market. First basemen are valued completely differently in these last few years based on what they've seen happen to other first basemen for the last 10 to 20 years going into their mid and upper 30s. So I'll let you either poke some holes in the argument I just made if you have anything you disagree with, or add on to what you're thinking about this one.
Yeah, I mean, for the sake of podcasting, I'd love to disagree with you, but I think the recency bias of the disrespect that Prince Fielder is getting here by not understanding how consistent he was and how good he was in a time where, I mean, I don't even think we appreciate him in his prime. And you mentioned that time where he signed with Detroit in 2012. In 2011, you mentioned the 38 home runs, 120 RBIs, but you look at the advanced stats, 168 WRC plus, which was an elite offensive performance from him. And over the 5 seasons prior to that, he was averaging 287, 393, a 540 slash, 36 home runs and 109 RBIs per year, consistent. And the other thing is, you look at Pete Alonso, and yes, power hitter in his own right, but his overall production has been going down. And the interesting part about all of this, you mentioned it being ironic that they're using this comparison. The cautionary tale begins with a deal like Fielder's because of what happened here. And Fielder already was and is a better player, a better metric of giving someone a long-term contract. And it didn't work out there because look at Fielder posting an OPS plus of 132 in his career, which reflects an overall offensive performance about 32% better than league average. Look at Alonso on the other side of it. OPS plus stands at 128 through his first 5 seasons, which is good, but not on the level of Prince Fielder, which he did consistently year after year. A better on base skills, career OBP of 382, which is significantly better than Alonso's 352. And the real kicker that no one's even talking about, because I feel like it's a lost art, even though it was a big talking point during the World Series, is the defensive comparison. Neither player was a Gold Glove caliber first baseman. Let's not get lost in that. But Fielder's overall defensive metrics, now we look back 13 years ago, were far more favorable than Alonso's. Fielder finished his career with a 5.3 defensive WAR, and that's at first base, and that's a player that isn't going to hurt you at first base. You can't say the same thing about Pete Alonso. I mean, you can talk about some of the war here defensively. It's not good. So the defense is a significant detractor from Alonso's overall value. And you're not signing him to field first base grounders, but it has to be taken into consideration. The bottom line is that Pete Alonso to Prince Fielder and asking for the same kind of long-term high dollar deal is just a massive stretch. So to use this as a template, it just shows seriously that Scott Boras is out of touch. He hits sometimes, but I mean, this was a big swing and a miss for me. And Prince Fielder, go back and watch some of those YouTube highlights of this dude hustling around the bases at his size and some of those other interesting stuff that baseball is magical, baseball is romantic. Look at his numbers compared to his dad's and how much they're in similarity together. It's wild that worked out the same way. High leverage situations or not, Prince Fielder is unbelievable. He's underappreciated because of the market he played in, truly.
Yeah, I think Scott Boras, and I don't know if Pete is too. We don't really hear from the player. We don't know how much is agent driven and how much the player is also driving this. Since 2019, when Pete debuted, he's second out of everybody in home runs since then with 226, only behind Aaron Judge, who has 232. Aaron Judge has those 232 in only 699 games. Pete's 226 comes in 846 games. So a lot more games to get him to that level, which is saying two things. It's saying Alonso's more durable than Judge, good thing, but he's also not having the frequency of home runs. Still ton of home runs, but I think that stat can also be deceiving. Kyle Schwarber is 14 behind Pete at 212 since 2019 in 792 at-bats, so also less at-bats there, less home runs, so you could argue that. But what I will say on Pete's side or Scott Boras' side is the AAV I don't have a problem with. That 9-year, $214 million works out to about $23.77 million a year, which by those standards back then, that was a giant deal, not just the years, the AAV, that's also big time. I think that is about what Pete should get right now, AAV-wise. I just happen to think the AAV should be, or the years should be significantly lower. Again, just a year and a half ago, whenever it was, he was apparently, reportedly, I think Joel Sherman said he was offered a deal by the Mets for 7 years at about $22.5 million a year. I mean, like, probably should have taken it. I don't know if he's getting 7 years anymore, and I think $22.5 million is fair. To me, the perfect contract for Pete is, I'd say 92 million over 4 years. That sets him at $23 million a year. I would put significant escalators in there. 40 home run mark, a big jump up in salary. 100 RBI mark, a big jump in salary. So put some escalators that can easily get that up to over $100 million. Maybe a mutual option for a 5th year, or if that's not tempting enough, give him the player option for a 5th year, and we end there. To me, that's fair. If the 3 for 90 is something that he legitimately turned down at $30 million a year, and again, with it, we don't have necessarily 100% confirmation that is true, but man, I mean, that sounds good to me as well. I wonder if there's a world where he does take a 1-year prove it deal like some other players have done and just tries to go nuclear and have another 50 home run season. But I don't know, man. I think they're getting close to being a little delusional here if all of what we're hearing is true.
So the thing that I'm looking at as well is the historic nature. I mean, we just got the word that David Wright's number will be retired for the Mets, and looking at their numbers and all the leaders and team value and all that, Pete Alonso is just 26 home runs shy of surpassing Darryl Strawberry to become the Mets all-time leader in home runs. Hypothetically, if he was a Met this year, he's seemingly going to be passing that. Is that valuable enough for you as the Mets front office to say we could sell that? Or as an overpay? Is that something that you place value in, or do the Mets look at that and say, let him walk? Juan Soto's going to own that one day.
I think you bake some of that into giving him a little bit of extra money. All right. I said I think $23 million a year is fair. If you want to bake some of that in and think about that and get it up to $25 million a year, I think that's okay. 26, I'd say, like, we got to stop at some point. But I think David Stearns learns from history, looks at these other first base contracts and looks at the body type Pete Alonso has and the position he plays, and he's going to be honest. He's not going to be super emotional, as we've said before, or emotional at all. I think he wants him back, but I think he wants him back not completely on his terms, but he's not going to go to a point that he's not comfortable with, where he thinks it's going to be a really, really bad contract. I mean, you've already committed 15 years to Juan Soto. Who knows what that looks like in his upper 30s and, when he gets to 40. I think there's a world where they can get to 4, maybe 5 with Pete. But if 9 years is seriously what he's considering, number one, I don't think he gets that anywhere. I know we always say there's always bound to be one team that goes crazy. A team like the Angels has done this before. The Blue Jays are desperate. We hear that both of them are potentially interested in Pete. And now we hear the Red Sox again kicking the tires on him. I don't understand why they're still trying to run Tristan Casas out of town. So yeah, to answer your question, I think they do consider those milestones a little bit as a Met, but I don't think they're going to make them this front office. I do not think those are going to get the best of them.
So as it stands, a short-term deal seems probably the most likely outcome, with the Mets remaining the favorite if that is the case, because all these teams you mentioned, the Giants, the Angels, the Blue Jays, the Red Sox, and even the Mets, the barrier is this long-term deal. And again, going back to the irony of using this Prince Fielder deal as a template, that deal did not work out. And no disrespect to Pete, but Prince Fielder was a much better player than him. And I don't think that's being unfair. It's just the truth. So he deserves to get paid, of course. Power is something that's very valuable in this league, but this is one of those things. You're sitting at the blackjack table and you sat there a little bit too long. You probably should have accepted the initial deal the Mets gave you, because that's the highest AAV you're going to be looking at. And if I'm Pete, you probably go back to the drawing board and try to have that nuclear year that you're looking for. And if you're a part of some big moments and you're hitting around Juan Soto, chances are it's conducive to have one of the best years of your career.
Yeah, think about how often Francisco Lindor and Juan Soto are going to be on base for him. You could have another one of those way over 100 RBI seasons. It's unfortunate for him. I mean, a 217 season 2 years ago, and then this year, the lowest home run and RBI total for him. It didn't work out. And that one home run against Devin Williams, amazing, going to stick out in fans' memories forever. But that's not going to convince a guy like David Stearns suddenly that, oh, he hit 200 in high leverage situations in the regular season, but he hit that home run, so he must be super, super clutch. No, I mean, I'll thank Pete Alonso for that home run forever, but I don't think that one moment is going to change the mind of David Stearns.
So we'll definitely keep you guys updated on Pete Alonso. We're going to jump into the meat of the order and talk about the rest of the news around Major League Baseball. All right, well, stop me if you heard this one before. The Dodgers are active in free agency, and they have signed Korean infielder Hae-Sung Kim to a 3-year contract worth $12.5 million with a 2-year club option that could extend the deal through 2029 for an additional $9.5 million, including $2.5 million posting fee paid to Kim's former KBO team, the Kai Woom Heroes. So their total investment is $15 million, and they make room on the 40-man roster of Dodgers designated catcher Diego Cartaya for assignment. So we looked at Hae-Sung Kim. We talked about him pretty briefly on here, but we did mention him as one of those backup plans for some of these teams looking to do something exciting. A 4-time consecutive KBO Golden Glove winner, elite defense. We talked about this at second base and shortstop. Looked at the match potentially with the Yankees, and also the 20-plus stolen bases in 7 full KBO seasons. There's some questions about the power transfer in the MLB. Everyone had the offensive questions about him. He has developed into a well above average hitter. Look at his average, 326 last year, and average that for the past 3 years or so. There's going to be some challenges for him. This is not a shoe-in that he's going to be a star player. I mean, you can look at former KBO star himself, Hae-Sung Kim over there. He had some trouble adjusting to pitching. The defense was never the issue. But again, I mean, the Dodgers manager, Dave Roberts, came out and talked about this. He envisions him as being a super utility player in 2025. And we know the Dodgers make a living of depth and versatility, finding guys all over the field and making it work. So he's probably going to play a lot of second base. He's going to play some shortstop as well as he did in Korea. But with some limited experience at third base, he's probably going to be out there. Maybe they'll put him in the outfield and he'll be one of those players. Maybe he'll play the Kike role if they don't bring him back.
Yeah, I was just thinking, is there really room for Kike? Is there room for everybody they have right now? I wouldn't be surprised if there's another trade to make sure they fit the roster. If not, maybe some younger guys still have some options that they can use to keep them in AAA for a little bit. I mean, this is a hell of a signing for them. I didn't, to be completely honest, I did not even know they were really in the mix for this. I just kept on hearing Mariners, Angels, a lot of Mariners. Um, but dude, the Dodgers team, the thing about them is, yes, they spend a lot of money, but the way they've built their team, I feel like in years past, whenever there's a powerhouse team that just throws a ton of money around, they end up with one of two things. They're usually either a powerhouse where they're just going to bash you to death, or they have an incredible 1 through 5 pitching staff. I think of the Phillies back when they had just ace after ace after ace, whether it be Cliff Lee. They had eventually had Roy Halladay and let Lee go, and then got Lee back, and Roy Oswalt and Cole Hamels. It just, as a Met fan, it drove me crazy. This team, the thing about it is they have everything. They are incredibly well-rounded. So they haven't just thrown their money at the shiniest objects every time and just gotten the best power hitters or just the best pitchers. They have everything. You mentioned the speed here for Kim, the defense. So annoying to play this team, man. Like, it's just got to be so annoying because they can beat you in so many different ways, and you never really have a lead big enough to know that you're going to beat them. They're going to hit. They're going to hit for power. They're going to run. They're going to pitch, obviously. The bullpen, I mean, a lot of the same guys back there again, and they're pretty good last year. So, and they have youth if they need to bring it up and put out other guys out there. The other note here I just want to make is Diego Cartaya. Like, that's no throwaway to just get rid of, to DFA. This was a former top prospect, like Dodgers minor league player of the year just a little bit ago. This shocked some people, including Dodger fans, seeing that name in there. I'm not saying they need him. They're pretty rich at the catching position. But someone's going to scoop him up and, try to get that talent that we've seen before. But yeah, as far as Kim, it's just the rich gets richer. It kind of sucks for a team like the Mariners who have done nothing and their fans were just drooling for something, felt like they had him in their grips, and suddenly you wake up to the news that he's a Dodger.
So it's so hard because there's so many places you can go with this. You mentioned all the conversation about the depth, and we talked about, we'll get into the trade that they made to loosen up that depth here and make some room for Kim and Cartaya as well. There was some conversation on social media about how the Dodgers inflate some of their prospects and that they're good at doing that to create value. Maybe the player is not exactly who they are, but I think it's more of the case of what you're saying. There's an embarrassment of riches. So even when you cut something, it's going to be valuable, but it just doesn't fit on your team. The real thing I want to talk to you about is the Kim turning down the higher offers, because there was a 5-year, $28 million proposal from the Angels. And instead, Kim opted to go to the Dodgers, which you'd imagine he's valuing the championship pedigree and the developmental reputation. Maybe he sees some holes in his game translating from the KBO to the MLB and says, you know what? I'll take significantly less to go to the Dodger team and be a part of something here instead of, let's be honest, the Angels haven't really been well known for developing players. So maybe 26-year-old Kim's like, I could make more money after the fact here and be a major league player and maybe win a couple rings.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough to argue with if you're feeling like, all right, I'm going to a brand new country, new league. Like, going to the Dodgers is a pretty cushy spot to land in. And like you mentioned, the Angels have not had the best reputation for a while now. So I don't love it as an outside observer and as a fan, but I get it. I do hope there's someone that comes along that has just a different mindset. And we saw it from Corbin Burns a little bit where, like, I just need more guys that want to create their own path instead of just jumping on the bandwagon that already exists and just being a part of it. And I get I get it a little bit from the guys that are coming overseas because they want to land somewhere comfortable. But I just want to see a little bit more alpha mentality from some guys. I said on Twitter the day of this signing, like, nothing against what the Dodgers did, good for them, and really not even anything against Kim. But I would just love to see less Kevin Durant kind of mentality and more of what Corbin Burns did, going somewhere where you have a good offer. It's not necessarily the powerhouse. You're not a World Series guarantee, but you're going to be a big part of a good team. So we'll see. Dodgers, who knows? They may not be done.
Yeah, and so they were not done, of course, because we saw some trades going down and making room for these deals here. The Reds have acquired infielder Gavin Lux from the Dodgers in exchange for an outfield prospect, Mike Sirota, and a competitive balance round A draft pick, which will be 37th overall. And this is per MLB Trade Rumors giving us those details. And Lux, looking at him as a player, only 27 years old, feels like he's been in the league for a lifetime at this point. He's a former first-round pick himself and a top prospect. He did have a bounce-back second half in 2024. You look at some of that slash line. He did struggle early in the season. And the end of the year, looking at the career high in doubles caught my eye, Devin, 24. Home runs at 10 here. He's a guy playing a role that's a depth piece here. And the Reds' plan to use Lux is going to be interesting. It's going to be similar to what Kim's being used for the Dodgers. Lux going to be providing that over there for Cincinnati. Ellie De La Cruz at shortstop, Matt McLean at second base. Lux probably going to compete for time at third, I'd imagine. He's going to be a versatile infield backup in all these different positions. And, you can look at the other infield depth. I mean, you talk about the Reds here. I don't think we do it enough. We can talk about Candelario, Christian Encarnacion Strand as Novelli Marte as well. We don't talk about him enough here. So I don't know where to go. I mean, we could sit here and just talk about how this affects the Dodgers and what Lux did there and where it's going to go. But I think more of the conversation should be put on the Reds, because I think this is, to me, the Reds getting a versatile player that could reap some benefits here in a team that really needs a little bit of a spark outside of Ellie De La Cruz.
Yeah, so, this is what I found interesting. The infield is very, very crowded there. And the first response I saw from people on Twitter, baseball people, was, okay, this is interesting. They trade for a left-handed infielder, and their biggest need was a right-handed outfielder. So I heard something different than you did as far as how they're going to use him. And we won't necessarily know until Terry Francona starts filling out the lineup card in spring training. Thinking that they need a right-handed outfielder. Apparently, Matt McLean played a lot of center field in the Arizona Fall League and looked good doing it. So one idea I did here is, by bringing in Lux, maybe he can be the second baseman, and then you move McLean to play the outfield, and now you have your right-handed outfielder, because the infield, as you mentioned, is too crowded. Ellie's going nowhere. Noelvi Marte, I know when he came back from his suspension from doing dumb stuff, he wasn't very good, but we've also seen him tear the cover off the ball. So starting from, season's beginning without the rocky stuff going on, maybe we get a different player. I think they're going to give him a chance as well. So I don't know, man. I don't think you acquire a Gavin Lux to have him as like a utility guy that you're moving around. I think they're going to want him. And listen, I know the Dodgers made Lux kind of a part-time player, kind of a platoon type of guy. But I think if you're the Reds and you're acquiring Gavin Lux, I expect as of now for him to be at second base a lot. That's just my expectation. We're going to need to find out more about the Matt McLean stuff, but I did not realize until I read about it that he was playing some center field in the Arizona Fall League this year.
Yeah, for sure. And obviously the Dodgers clearing up that logjam, but no one really is talking about Mike Sirota as that 21-year-old third-round pick in 2024. He was impressive at Northeastern, 298 slash line with 473, 513. He is known for some of that speed and defensive potential in center field. And looking at his name, I would get used to seeing it. He could probably be a good player, maybe a trade piece down the line, or he could be contributing in some way. 21 years old. We talked about their ability to develop players. It would not shock me to see Mike Sirota develop into the best version of himself, because he's now when the Dodgers can't.
Yeah, well, I again, looking into this deal, I read about it, and everyone, as always, praised for the Dodgers and what they got back here, whether it be the compensatory pick to kind of be able to pick a little earlier in the draft than they were going to, or Sirota, all good things. So, I mean, typical Dodgers, man. They seem to get the best of every little tool or piece of value that they actually have to give. So, not surprised.
So just probably a half hour before we hit record on this podcast, San Francisco Giants made some news here, agreeing to a 1-year, $15 million deal with the veteran starting pitcher, Justin Verlander. He's going to be entering his 20th MLB season, 42 years old, and he's returning to the National League following that brief stint with the New York Mets back in 2023. Look at his credentials. Obviously not the same pitcher at age 42 as he was all those years ago, but a 9-time All-Star, 3-time Cy Young winner, a decorated career, looking to end it on a solid note here. But I mean, looking at his season, the Giants are hoping for a bounce back. That's what we're looking for here. He obviously look at the Logan Webb led rotation here. You understand that that's what they're looking for. But this, let's be honest here, this is Justin Verlander. You're trying to buy low for someone who's going to try to get some magic in a bottle here. And this is not the be all end all answer for the Giants, but it is a move that's going to make a couple of those casuals excited, right? You see Justin Verlander in those tight pants, that cream colored home uniform, tighter than tight, those pants, but Justin Verlander towing the hill over there in San Francisco.
You always have to throw the tight pants in there when we talk about Verlander.
Dude,
Another
the
person
tightest
on.
pants. Him and Walker Bueller have the tightest pants
Oh
in
yeah,
baseball. It's
yeah.
unbelievable.
Bueller does come close to him as well. Um, so Verlander also, someone brought up the point on Twitter, like it seems that he just likes to sign with teams that wear orange. Yet another orange team, whether it be the Tigers, the Astros, the Mets, and now the Giants. So he's just making sure he gets to all those orange teams before he's done.
Mm.
I like this landing spot for him. Don't get me wrong, I'm not jumping up and down like, oh, he's going to be so amazing for them. But I think it makes sense. If you've looked at his recent history, he's more than likely going to be in and out of the roster as far as injury. He's probably not going to give you 30 starts by any means, but he doesn't need to on this team. So you look at the pitchers they have on the staff. Obviously, Logan Webb, Robbie Ray, who came back from injury last year, showed some signs, had some struggles at times, and then also showed signs of his former self. He's going to be giving you a full season, so I
He's
think
got
that's
tight
nice to
pants
see.
too. Robbie Ray wears tight pants as well.
Tight pants crew. Kyle Harrison, he's going to be in there. And then as far as the rest of it goes, Jordan Hicks looked like a great signing last year because he dominated as a starter for a couple months and then eventually hit a wall. But again, he was used to being a reliever and then kind of went back in the bullpen. So we'll see what their plan is for him. My guess is they want him to be a starter, but we'll find out more in spring. Hayden Birdsong, who showed some good moments up in the rotation at times, he's going to be an option there. And then even a Mason Black, who again was high pitching prospect for them, got a few starts to them at times, kind of up and down on the major league roster. So the point is, they don't need 30 starts from Justin Verlander. He's going to be there. I think he can help some of these young guys out. I know Kyle Harrison is a lefty, not a righty, but still, just the mentality part of the game. Having Verlander around a Kyle Harrison or a Hayden Birdsong or even a Jordan Hicks who's still trying to get in the groove of being a starter. There's worse guys you could have in the clubhouse helping those kids out, and then from time to time giving you starts as well. So I almost think of him this year on the Giants as almost a player coach kind of guy. He'll start some games for you. Every once in a while, we might see the old Justin Verlander. I think we'll also see a lot of 5-and-fly starts from him, and I think he'll have some nagging injuries that keep him out for a few weeks at a time. I think that's my expectation, but I still, with the $15 million, I like the signing. I don't see anything bad about it.
Yeah, and there's an apples to apples comparison with another orange team. The Orioles signed Charlie Morton for the same exact deal, 1 year, $15 million. And, this is a deal. It was getting a little bit clowned on Twitter here. If you look at Charlie Morton signing, and you can look at the age 41 season, but he does bring a wealth of experience to the Baltimore rotation, similar to what Justin Verlander brought. He did look at the Braves span here, 3.87 ERA over the last 124 starts. Remarkable consistency when he can stay healthy. For a pitcher in his late 40s, those numbers still jump out at you. He made 30 starts pitching to a 4.19 ERA across 165 in the third inning. His strikeout rate, that was the problem. We talked about it. It dipped really low. It dipped 23.8%, his lowest since 2017. This is, to me, looking at the Orioles, and if you look at it in a vacuum, it's not such a bad signing, but it's overall the offseason. I think that's why people are mocking it. My question to you, outside of your just initial thoughts on Charlie Morton going there and maybe his contributions, is who do you think has more value? Is it Justin Verlander or is it Charlie Morton? Because this is like an apples to apples. It's the same amount of money for both sides, all things considered. Would you rather have Charlie Morton or would you rather have Justin Verlander for the 2025 season?
Um, So I think an interesting bet to make would be who will give you more innings this year. And my answer would be Charlie Morton. Based on the last couple of years, I think Charlie Morton will be in the rotation, actually starting every fifth day more often. I have nothing against the Morton signing. It's just like you lose Corbin Burns, and now you have Morton here. My problem with the Orioles, and I know last week you spent time using them as a punching bag multiple times, and I get it. And I'm going to use them as a punching bag a little bit here. I was thinking about this earlier, and I was looking at the roster. I think our thought for a while now is they've had a logjam on offense. The pitching, obviously, they've had some injury problems. They need to make sure, if they really want to be a legitimate competitor, that the pitching staff is in order. And maybe they can supplement that by moving some of these offensive prospects that they really have no room for a piece. And the roster, they have the same exact issues they've had now for like 2 years that they have the means to fix. Look at the potential or the projected lineup right now. It's probably Gunnar Henderson, Adley Rutschman, maybe Ryan O'Hearn at DH, Tyler O'Neill now because he signed another outfielder, Colton Cowser, Ryan Mountcastle at first, I'm guessing. I mean, O'Hearn will get time there as well. Cedric Mullins in center. He's still there. A lot of people thought he'd be gone. Jordan Westberg and then Jackson Holliday, which means Kobe Mayo and Heston Kjerstad still are blocked. You still have not fixed this situation. Like, and I know the offseason still has time, but that's driving me crazy. Like, the Tyler O'Neill signing seems a little strange to me. If you believe in Heston Kjerstad, like, you're letting Santander go just to sign O'Neill. Kjerstad's still blocked. I guess he can get some time at DH and kind of split it with O'Hearn maybe. Kobe Mayo too could do that. Something's got to give, man. We've been saying this for too long. So that brings me, and I know this wasn't on the outline until a little later, but I think it makes sense to talk about now.
Definitely. I was going to jump to it as well.
The rumor is we've heard a little bit about Dylan Cease, but a lot more about Luis Castillo, the Orioles maybe being interested. I haven't heard, other than just random people guessing, what they'd be willing to offer. But a Kjerstad makes a lot of sense. I don't think they'd give up a Mayo in a Castillo deal unless you're getting something else back from Seattle as well. But Kjerstad, I feel like they just keep on like pushing him down. Like, no, we're going to fill the spot with someone else. So Kjerstad and maybe something else to Seattle for Luis Castillo. I don't know. I don't think that's a terrible idea. My question to you, and you can comment on Baltimore as well, obviously, but like the Luis Castillo splits home and road are interesting from last year. Like, he was good in Seattle and just kind of average on the road, which makes me start to second guess. Is he still ace adjacent, or is he decreasing to like a number 3 guy? Because the Orioles don't really need another like number 3 pitcher in the rotation. I feel like they have a lot of those guys.
Yeah, there's definitely, looking at the advanced metrics, you look at some of the decreasing stats that worry you, but I think a Castillo move could certainly rectify what has been a disaster of an offseason. There's no doubt about it. You'd feel a lot better about this rotation with Luis Castillo anchoring it than you do right now with the 2 offseason acquisitions being Charlie Morton and Sugano transitioning over here. This is not what you had planned. If you were looking for Corbin Burns and you replace him with those 2 players, that's not what you're looking for as well. So they need to potentially secure Jack Flaherty. They need to either trade for Dylan Cease. They need to trade for Luis Castillo. This is something that needs to be fixed before you take the field, because this is a problem. This team is significantly worse than we last saw them. And this offseason has been an absolute disaster. And I think if there was a chance, and everybody knew that Corbin Burns may not wind up being there, because ultimately it didn't come down to money. It came down to where he wanted to play. So you can't blame the ownership, but you had to have a backup plan. And I think right now, if you look at the MLB Network John Morosi report with the Mariners and the Orioles being in discussion for this deal that would send Luis Castillo to Baltimore, Baltimore has to have some urgency. You don't want to show your hand and say this has to happen, but there has to be a little bit of, we need to make this happen. And the Orioles do have several players. If you look at just the metrics of what Seattle needs and what the Orioles could give back, the depth, you talk about the high price prospects. Of course, Kobe Mayo is at the top of everybody's list, but even look at third baseman Jordan Westberg. You look at the 18 home runs from him. Ryan Mountcastle as well. I mean, he's a potential fit as a platoon, but you can't headline a deal with those 2 players. It probably has to be the inclusion of a Kobe Mayo or a Kjerstad to make that deal go ahead. But you also saw Seattle. I mean, they reportedly, again, we're not in the room with them, but the Red Sox apparently offered Tristan Casas and Yoshida for Castillo, and Seattle turned it down. So I feel like you'd have to top that deal by a lot. And I mean, is Kobe Mayo proven enough that would you turn? I feel like Tristan Casas is more proven than Kobe Mayo.
Yeah,
so
no.
With both teams, I mean, if you look at just in general, the Orioles and the Mariners both had an offseason that did not go as planned for them. This trade would benefit both of them to make both fan bases breathe a sigh of release, because you didn't just miss out on the big fish. You missed out even on the smaller ones. I mean, Carlos Santana, we mentioned Hai-Sung Kim. Like, you missed out on every single piece here. And both these teams need to do something to reinvigorate the fan base. If you're buying a ticket or buying a package of tickets to get into the games and watch them consistently, you want to watch them on TV. Are you feeling inspired about what the Mariners did? Are you feeling inspired about what the Orioles have done? I would say no.
Yeah, the one thing I will say is you mentioned Jordan Westberg's name. That kid's going nowhere. I'm convinced he's going to be a star. I really do think Jordan Westberg is one of the best guys they have there. Not as like hyped over the last couple years as some of these other guys, but he might be the best of the bunch. I mean, I know Kauser's great as well. Jackson Holiday, we'll see, struggled. Kobe Mayo, when he got called up last year, really struggled. I was maybe his biggest fan that's not a Baltimore fan, and really, really struggled, which shows you how hard that transition from AAA to the big leagues can be. I think Kjerstad just makes too much sense. He has two options left still, even though it seems like he's been up and down so much. So it does give Baltimore, and I'll be honest, if I'm guessing, even though I think that deal makes sense, I'm guessing they're going to hold on to him and just play with those options. But I wish they wouldn't. It's driving me a little nuts. And I'm not an Orioles fan, but you need a pitcher. And the Mariners, I know some Mariner fans are like, no, like we need all the pitching we can get. You don't need 5 like ace level dudes or ones and twos. Like it's okay to mix in a true number 5 guy that's just like a innings eater, that's reliable, that's not always going to be great. You need offense, man. Like you need some offense. So take a chance. Castillo, he's owed the most money. He's the oldest, so he's the logical one to move. But yeah, man, Baltimore needs to do something. I'll be honest though, the guy I hope they're at least calling about and being serious and making serious offers for is Dylan Cease. Like, go get, if he's truly available and everything going on in San Diego, which we're going to get to, there's a lot of drama there right now. If Dylan Cease is available, man, blow their doors off. Go get Dylan Cease. Like then I will change my tune about the Orioles a little bit.
I mean, right now, the offseason, if you stand pat, we just mentioned Charlie Morton, 1 year, $15 million. Tomoyuki Sugano, Japanese star, 1 year, $13 million. Tyler O'Neill, 3 years, 50. Gary Sanchez. This is not the offseason David Rubenstein wanted to have as far as going out there. And not to mention, you lost Corbin Burns. Like, he left. And again, it wasn't their fault. They offered him the money, all that. But this is the offseason we're looking at here. And it's not inspiring for a team that was supposed to be on the rise, supposed to be an electric factory. Are you feeling that way about the Baltimore Orioles? And right now you're not. And there's still some time left, as you mentioned. We're sitting at the beginning of January. We still have 3 months left. A lot of things can happen from now until then. And if Dylan Cease is anchoring that rotation with Dean Kramer as the 5th starter, Zach Eflin, Grayson Rodriguez, obviously, you hope Trevor Rogers does his thing, Cade Povich, even seeing Chase McDermott's name popped in there with depth. So, like, this is a problem. You need to find something. If it's Castillo, if it's Cease, one of those guys has to be in there because they immediately slot in probably above all those guys. Like, unless, because the thing is, you look at Grayson Rodriguez, he's still a what if. Like, he's still a guy you're hoping he could be that ace, but he hasn't been that yet. You know what Dylan Cease is, and you also know what Luis Castillo could be. I'm with you, though. I think Dylan Cease is the more guaranteed thing, but it's going to cost more. There's no doubt about it's going to cost more than Luis Castillo.
No doubt about it. And the last thing I'll say is, like, we mentioned the logjam and like trying to do something about it. I just feel like eventually it's going to bite them in the ass somehow. The logjam's only going to continue to get even more jams. Samuel Basallo is an absolute stud, and he's going to be somewhere in AAA at some point next year. And if he tears it up like he's torn every level up, like you're going to have, your hand is going to be forced to get this kid up in some capacity. And Adley's there, so you can give him some time at catcher, maybe some time at DH, but you can't give 5 different guys time at DH. Like, so that's not going to work. I honestly thought Ryan Mountcastle was going to be the guy that they would move this offseason in some capacity. Didn't think it'd be a giant deal. I don't know if they'd get a whole lot back for Mountcastle by himself, but I'm very surprised to see that there haven't really even been any rumors about Mountcastle being moved out. I just thought that was logical because eventually Basallo would take that spot. If they envision Adley here at catcher for long term, Basallo gets first base. Ryan O'Hearn can help out at first base until Basallo's ready. But I don't know. I mean, it just, nothing really seems to come to fruition with this team, even though there seems like there's almost endless possibilities with the amount of talented offensive players they have and limited spots.
So looking at some of the other news here, and we'll get into the big Peter Seiler story with the San Diego Padres you alluded to, but first I want to get into the story really that led the week, started our document looking at when we're putting the notes together. It's the Athletics signing Brent Rooker to a 5-year, $60 million extension with a vesting option for a 6th season, which increases the value to $90 million. And again, this is according to the Athletics' Ken Rosenthal. And this also includes a $30 million for Rooker's arbitration years and $15 million annually for 2 free agent seasons. So this marks the first A's 5-year deal since extending Trevor Cahill back all the way back in 2011, $30.5 million over there. And we look at Rooker's 2024. We don't put enough praise on it. He's a great follow on X, by the way. He's someone you should be following. He's a future star of baseball, if not one of the biggest stars right now that you're not talking about. 39 home runs last year. Well deserving of the money here. This guy is an absolute stud, middle of the order force. You look at the strikeout rate, that concerns you, but everybody strikes out in baseball. This deal right now runs through 2029. He's a key piece for the A's offense, not only for this season, but years coming forward. You look at the promising young players that were offensively surprising for a lot of people. And looking at the A's right now, it does help their revenue sharing spending requirement because now you look at all this stuff too with them, like they're spending money here. And I liked what Brent Rooker did as well. He's 30 years old. He recognized, probably looking at the market here, looking at the years, he wanted to avoid arbitration, of course, potential injury risk for the financial security. But you look at this move for the A's, it kind of works out for both parties here because they gain cost control. They retain a player who has to be a fan favorite. I understand it's a different fan base, but this is a guy you can rally around as they look forward to that Las Vegas transition if it does happen.
No doubt about it. Super likable guy. I will say 5 years, 60 million, and I know they're buying out some arbitration here. 5 years, 60 million, to me is more bad news for the offensive free agents that are still remaining, like a Pete Alonso and Santander. Like those aren't giant numbers. And if you look at the season this guy just had, like it seems like they're getting a deal for him. Like the numbers are insane. You mentioned the 39 home runs, 26 doubles, hit 293. OPS is 562. Like this guy, 614 plate appearances. So he's playing constantly as well. What a season. And he's going to Sacramento where most of those players' offensive numbers are probably going to be a bit inflated because the ball's going to jump out of there in that heat. So, I mean, unbelievable. The other thing about Rooker, this guy was a waiver pickup for the A's. They picked him up off of waivers. So that goes to show you, sometimes you see these guys that get DFA'd by other teams and a team takes a chance on them. You're like, what's this signing? Some of these guys, you never know, man. There are stories like this. None more interesting than Rooker. I think he was top 35 pick back in, let me make sure I get this right here. Well, let's say this. So he landed with the A's on an waiver claim early in the 2022-23 season. He was a 28-year-old DH corner outfielder who had just been bounced between the Twins, Padres, Royals without getting any look or much of a look at any of those stops. Yes, top 35 overall draft pick, hit well in the minors. So an obvious target on waivers, but to dream that he would do this is unbelievable. So good for him. Good for the A's, who now, if you look at their lineup, at the very least, it's interesting and exciting, especially in that stadium that they're going to play in this year. And the pitching staff, you've added Severino and Springs at the top. So, like, I don't know. They might be fun to watch this year. You're going to get a full year of Jacob Wilson, who's going to put the ball and play a ton. Lawrence Butler, I saw a lot of criticism. Someone, maybe it was Ben Verlander, picked him as a breakout candidate, or maybe it was Bleacher Report walk-off, one of them. And people got all over them because it's like, I think Butler already broke out. Like, look at what he did the second half of last year. They're an exciting team. Rooker obviously in there as well. Shea Langoliers, who can hit the ball out of the ballpark.
Tyler
I don't know.
Soderstrom for sure. I love that guy.
There's some things to be excited for. Zach Geloff, who I know had a really bad sophomore year, but if he can bounce back and be more like the year he had 2 years ago, I don't know. There's some fun things to look forward to. And fantasy drafts, man, some of those guys are going to be higher targets than you might think, again, because of that stadium that they will be playing in.
Yes, for as much grief and the deserved grief that they get a lot of the time, they have been developing a lot of these understated offensive guys, and they've been a little factory creating some of these, the power and the contact. So they're onto something. So maybe Rooker's looking at this is the best case scenario for me to be here because I know I'm starting to hit here because it didn't work out other places. It's a guy who hit, career rock bottom as far as that goes. Being waived after you live your dream by being called up to the show can't be fun. So he's probably like, this is a lot of fun to do these things. Why would I change the setting? Obviously, they're going to Sacramento, but that, as you alluded to before, it feels like that's going to be only increasing the offensive numbers. So I'm excited for it.
Yeah, and I'll just say one thing. One of our, and maybe but maybe both of us, end of the season, regular season predictions was that Brent Rooker would be traded. So we got that one wrong. They extended him.
Well, we have some news here about the San Diego Padres that you alluded to before. We're going to close out the show with a couple of Padres conversations. And the Seidler family's control of the San Diego Padres is now at the center of a legal battle following the death of Peter Seidler. Now we have a lawsuit filed by Peter's widow, Sheil. So she accuses two of Peter's brothers, Matt and Bob, of breaching their duties as trustees of Peter's trust. And this suit does claim, Devin, that they schemed to sell trust assets to themselves at below market prices and acted with racial and sexist motivations to prevent Sheil from assuming control of the team. So at the heart of all of this is the ownership and the future of the San Diego Padres. Peter Seidler had aggressively built into a competitive, high-spending team. We saw what he did there. They made significant strides in both not only on-field play, fan engagement, postseason success under his leadership. And let's be honest, they're, comparatively to these other markets, they are a small market for a baseball team. And after his passing, things have gone in a different direction. The future of the team is uncertain. And now we have Sheil getting in there. It's trying to seek to assume role of control for this situation. And there's a lot to be broken down here. Sheil's going to be seeking damages and the removal of Matt as a trustee. She wants resolution to secure the Padres' future that aligns, most importantly, with Peter's vision. That is the main thing here, because if we're being honest, looking at the way the San Diego Padres have gone since Peter Seidler's untimely death, the Padres are not the same team with the same focus, and they're not putting as much emphasis on winning. We watched what they did. Would they have ever moved Juan Soto with Peter Seidler at the helm? I mean, he's the guy who made the move to make sure he's there, right? So it's very interesting to watch all this take place, and it's sad, honestly, but the financials are definitely going to have some huge stakes for what the San Diego Padres will be as we know it.
Yeah, it's getting a little bit messy over there. And I'll be honest. First of all, Peter Seidler, if you read anything San Diego based, this guy was beloved by San Diego Padre fans. So to lose him is obviously crushing. What he did for that team and that club was huge, and what everyone thought he was going to continue to do before his untimely passing. So that is one part of this. Now, I think it's going to be a little messy there for a little while. We hear the Arias trade rumors, the Dylan Cease trade rumors. Obviously, Soto was gone after last year, so I'll be honest. There was a part of us, even when Peter was still here, knowing that San Diego does not have the market of a New York or an LA, that when they were signing all these guys, long-term, huge deals. I mean, it's one thing to extend your big-time star in Tatis, right? Machado, we get it. The Bogart signing, like there's things started happening where you're like, whoa, how many years did they give Xander Bogaerts? And it just seemed like one after another, like, how do they have the capacity to do this? So part of you thought, all right, a few years down the road, like they might be in trouble, like money-wise. They're going to maybe have to do some things. And it's not easy to move super long-term deals. So we'll get into the trade rumors in a little bit, but just to comment on this a little more as far as the family story. So John Seidler, who's the oldest of Peter's 9 siblings, he's the one that has been given the team control, basically. And everything you read so far, and this is still fresh, this is only like a day or two old, this story. Everything I'm reading so far, whether it be fans or reporters, are not so sure what to make of John. Not so sure if he's legitimately, like, if he's really a baseball guy. There's rumors about he growing up as a Dodger fan, which obviously as a Padre fan can be disconcerting. And it seems like every fan is Team Sheil. Like they want it to go back because she's talking about Peter's vision and taking that back and continuing that. So I will say everything I've seen, it seems like they're rooting for Sheil here. And I think more and more will come out about this in the coming days, weeks, months. And I don't know if this is going to hamstring them a little bit, though, for the time being.
So when this goes, and maybe it will obviously be on Front Street in the baseball news cycle, but when this hits Discovery and you see some of the stuff here, the most concerning thing of the lawsuit from Sheila, she's alleging that Matt Seidler is seeking to sell or possibly relocate the team. And there are some sources around MLB that dismiss that as highly unlikely. But just the idea of that notion could be enough power to rally people behind. It's not only about the future of this team as far as competitive goes. We don't want a situation where they leave the market, right? We've seen it's realistic that you have teams steeped in history that disappear. So this is a real life thing that could happen. And I'm not saying that that is the plan, but that's what's being alleged. So that just joins all of this with the discombobulation. You go back to the October 2024 conversation Scott Boras had. He flat out said that if Peter Seidler was alive, none of this would be happening. And I think Juan Soto would still be a Padre. And you can't help but believe that. And he is a guy who had a certain vision for this team. Clearly, he wanted the Padres to win in the worst way. And he, if he didn't get sick, 63 years old, some of these owners, they're still competitive and playing the game of chess behind the scenes until they're in their mid 80s, late 80s. So we could have had 20 more years of Peter Seidler if things didn't go that way. And maybe the Padres would have had a ring by then. Like, I still believe he had the passion, similar to Steve Cohen, to just do whatever it takes to win. And obviously the people that took over the team do not feel the same way, because we saw it go in a different direction pretty quickly following his death.
Yeah, the whole thing reads kind of like a made-for-TV drama. And like you said, we're gonna get more details as things come out. That part of the lawsuit, I go both ways with it, as far as the oh, well, he wants to move the team or sell the team. I wonder if that is how much credibility that has, or if it's just put in there to really get the attention and get people, whether it even be MLB, against these guys. But I'm they're going to look into it. Obviously right now they're denying all that kind of stuff, but yeah, sad to see that kind of stuff in San Diego. And it's been so electric there for a few years now, and the amount of fans they've gotten has been huge. So I'm hoping that it doesn't all get torn down super quickly.
So you mentioned Luis Arias, we mentioned Dylan Cease, but let's focus on Luis Arias. Obviously the strong bat, defensive limitations, but he's a potential trade candidate we keep seeing popping up, because the Padres reducing payroll is something they're looking to do. And the Yankees have popped into this circle here. Mariners have been rumored as well. But I come from the Yankee perspective. I know Northeast bias, and everyone can bat their eyes at it and do whatever you want, but their infield situation is fluid right now as spring training approaches. There's no doubt about it. There's some options, but obviously they're discussing the Padres about Luis Arias and what it would take. And they apparently were talking about Gavin Lux, but obviously Gavin Lux has already been traded to Cincinnati. These are all reports from John Heyman. And the Yankees losing both Anthony Rizzo and Gleyber Torres to free agency. They filled up first base with Paul Goldschmidt, as we discussed here. Jazz Chisholm is going to have to find a home. They talked about Nolan Arenado and Alex Bregman. Luis Arias is definitely an option here, and he's seemingly going to be moved, whether it's to the Seattle Mariners, with their infield needs are pressing as well. They lost Justin Turner to free agency. They turned down the option for Jorge Polanco. They're certainly looking for something in there. We mentioned their offseason not going the way they intended. This is probably looking not only to build a little bit of the morale for the fan base, but logistically filling up some of the spots at second, at third. They're looking at Luke Raley as potentially first base, Dylan Moore and Ryan Bliss at second, but bringing in a second baseman is probably a priority for them. So I guess it's whoever offers the better deal. And looking at both of the systems, I think, you can make the case that they both kind of fit the needs, and some of the things could happen here to meet the Padres' need. But ultimately, they're trying to cut payroll. Again, this goes to what we were talking about before with Peter Seidler. This is not in the roadmap he provided. This is a different perspective of the team. And I don't know. There's a lot of conversation. I know you probably feel the same way. I don't know if we've openly talked about Arias, and this is a guy who, as I mentioned, strong bat, makes contact, but he doesn't feel like he has more than one trick, right? He feels like a one-trick pony a little bit here. There's no other word for it, not to be disparaging, but that's what it feels like. He doesn't move the needle for me. He doesn't.
Okay, so this is what I found super interesting. The debate on social media right now about this guy is fascinating. And I'll be honest, I'm flip-flopping a lot. I'm usually pretty steadfast with how I feel about a player. This guy, I'm convinced you don't necessarily know the truth unless you're watching him every day. Like, so San Diego fans can give me a good comment. Marlins fans, if you're out there, can give a good comment, and Twins fans. Everyone else, I think you're just guessing a little bit. I go back and forth. When I think of him at the top of the lineup for Seattle, I think, yes, absolutely. Hell yes. Seattle's issue is they have pop. They just strike out entirely too much. They need to be able to hit, and regular old school hitting better. I made this comment. It wasn't even the Urias stuff. There was some kind of conversation about the Mariners or in their offense and how to improve, and maybe the pitching trade and all that stuff. I commented about the Mariners offense, and someone basically about their strikeouts, and someone commented that strikeouts don't matter. They were an average offensive team, and strikeouts don't matter. Like, that's after watching the Dodgers just put the ball in play to expose the Yankees defense and win the World Series. Like, how can you say that? I'm not saying every player in the lineup needs to constantly put the ball in play. You're going to have some 30% strikeout guys, but they can't all be 25, 30% strikeout guys. And that's the Mariners' problem. You put this dude at the top of your lineup and have one guy who can consistently get on base and put the ball in play. He doesn't need to hit home runs for you. He doesn't need to be your speed guy. I know that he's a defensive liability as well. But for that team, I think he's so valuable. I know there's been a lot of people out there calling him a one-win player based on the WAR kind of stuff. And I do get it a little bit because as a Met fan, Jeff McNeil, we started having this conversation of like, all right, listen, if he's not hitting for high average, what is he giving you? And to be honest, he's got more pop than Urias, and he's better defensively than Urias. And we're still saying, like, if he's not hitting for average, like, what is he bringing you? So I do get the argument, but I think Seattle would benefit. And honestly, if he was a Yankee, I don't mind that either because, dude, this guy would lead the league in runs. Like him at the top of the lineup and then Judge a little bit later. He's going to score so many runs, it's going to be unbelievable. A guy like him, usually the profile of a guy like that, at least they're going to have some speed, and he doesn't. That's the disappointment. And usually they also play good defense. So those two are easy knocks against him. I do get the knocks against him for most of the teams in MLB, but I think Seattle and kind of the Yankees as well, I like it. I'm not saying give up the world for it, but I like it. So I flip-flopped a little bit. I can see both sides, but for those two teams specifically, I wouldn't mind the acquisition.
And it's frustrating because if he did some of those things in an average way, defensively, the speed, those things, he'd be a much more valuable player. This guy has 3 straight batting titles. This is a guy who is known for striking out less than 40 times in a season while having more than 600 plate appearances. No other MLB player has done that since 2007. So if he was just average defensively, he had average speed. This is a guy who would be one of the best players in baseball. And again, he's a one-trick pony. You mentioned a one win, but like you do that well. The fact that he's won 3 straight batting titles either devalues that award or just shows he's an anomaly. He's not a guy who can do all the things well. And I think it's a mix of both. Again, if he somehow was able to put together and I don't know, put him in workout session like we were talking about, putting Jason Dominguez out in left field at Yankee Stadium in a North Face parka, this guy has the opportunity to be one of the best players in the league if you could just shore up that defense, right? Like if he's able to do what he can do and be a good defensive player, and it's wild to me. I don't think we're ever going to see a player like him again. I know everyone speaks hyperbolically, but holy shit, like 3 straight batting titles. Like I guarantee if you're listening out there, you don't remember that he's won 3 straight. You don't remember that. And he's done it 3 straight, and he could potentially do it again this year. That's how it happens.
Yeah, both leagues too. I mean, incredible. It's just crazy how quickly the narrative changes. Like, I feel like just a few months ago when he went to San Diego, they're showing montages of him being compared to Tony Gwynn because of the contact ability. And now, like, more than half the people I see commenting are trashing the dude. So, which one is it?
So we have some quick news here. We mentioned the Blue Jays, and they are currently the front runners for Anthony Santander with a reported offer of 4 years, $82 million. Of course, the years with the Orioles, the impressive 2024 season, 44 home runs, 102 RBIs. He could be a valuable addition to Toronto's lineup. And this is the Blue Jays just trying to save face here. He obviously is a potential fit for them. The team struggled to fill the cleanup spot. He produced only, the cleanup spot. If you look at the stats, Devin, I was going through it. They've only produced 12 home runs and a 689 OPS from the cleanup spot last year. There's no way you're going to be a competitive team with that spot. And putting Santander, even if he doesn't reach that 44 home run mark again, he's clearly going to be an upgrade from wherever they're there. Obviously, concerns about his future performance may arise like after the 4 years, maybe the third year, you're like, okay, it's not his career best season happened the year before he signed with us. But I would say it's a fair deal, right? I mean, you compare it to Teoscar Hernandez's deal with the Dodgers, 3 years, 66 for him. I think this is a fair deal, fair comp. And I think if he goes there, we could see a lot of electric pop. And Blue Jays need a win for themselves in this offseason. So Anthony Santander could be that.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, the whole front runner term, how many times have we seen this for Toronto now? Or like highest offer? I don't know. Santander he's another guy similar to what I just said about Arias, where depending on the match, he moves the needle certain places. He doesn't move the needle much for me going to Toronto. Like, I don't think that changes their outcome a whole lot. I think there's other places where I'd really like Santander and think he could be a good piece that does make a team better. The Blue Jays don't seem like that team to me. And he's also interesting as far as his market goes. Like, this is, again, we've now heard this rumor for a while without any signing. And it makes me think again that he's not really super interested in going there for whatever reason. This seems to happen over and over and over. Just write a different name in. My thought with him is I'm guessing he's waiting for Pete Alonso to sign, because I think once Pete Alonso signs and that power bat is gone, it might bring more teams to the table that are interested in Santander, a guy that can hit 40 home runs. And maybe there's a few more people willing to talk to him and try to bring him in. So, yeah, to Toronto, that match doesn't do much for me.
So looking at some of these quick hitters, I'll give you the 3 signings here to make sure you're aware of them. But Devin, I'll just ask your thoughts on them quick. The Royals agreed to a 1-year, $7 million deal with Michael Lorenzen pending a physical. We also had the Rangers bolstering their bullpen with Chris Martin on a short-term reinforcement, 1 year, 5.5 for him for the Texas Rangers. And Tampa Bay Rays officially announced a multi-year extension with the right-hander Drew Rasmussen. So $8.5 million over the next 2 seasons, covering his final 2 arbitration years, with a $5.5 million salary in 2026, an $8 million club option for 2027. Rasmussen is a guy who's a comeback option. He missed most of 2023-24 due to elbow surgery. He's expected to return to the rotation in full this year. So despite his injuries, I mean, this might be a nice little buy low for the Tampa Bay Rays, because he's shown elite potential. You look at some of the stuff here. It is a cost certainty for the Rays, as they always do here. It gives them extra year of control and the potential for a higher option if Rasmussen stays healthy. So out of all those deals here, that one jumped out to me because it happened later today. And I was like, oh, the Rays doing Rays things here. Even though they're in some flux here with their stadium, the Rays made a smart decision with Drew.
Yeah, no doubt about it. That's the biggest one. Lorenzen, nice one, like fine. I low risk. I think it's a nice piece for them, depth piece. He's an interesting guy. He's a little bit of Jekyll and Hyde, where he can go out there and light it up. I think for a few years ago, or maybe 1 or 2 years ago for the Phillies, he threw a no-hitter, and it's like, whoa, this guy's nasty. And then the next time out, he could get crushed for 8 runs. So he's that kind of guy, but the more pitching, the better. And the Royals, I really like them. So continue to supplement that team and that pitching staff. So I'm fine with that for sure. Chris Martin, listen, we've talked about the Rangers. It's another team I really, really like offensively. Like, find me another lineup that is that good. You're not going to find that many. Maybe a couple that can match them, but dude, if that clicks for them, the offense is great. Starting pitching, we have some health questions, but not terrible. They have some pieces there for sure. DeGrom, Evaldi obviously leading the way. Kumar Rocker, we'll see what they get from him this year. The bullpen's been the question. So several bullpen pieces left. They had to figure out a way to build a bullpen without these guys. And they've made a few minor signings. Martin has been very, very good at times for the last several years. He's up there in age. It sounds like this will be his last year, but I like the signing. Good 1-year deal. They've signed like 3 other guys under $2.5 million for 1 year. Hobie Milner's in there. Couple others. I had them written down
Yeah,
here.
Robert Garcia was in there.
There you go.
Armstrong. Yeah, those guys are there because they're
Sean
trying to replace
Armstrong.
Kirby Yates, David Robertson, Jose Leclerc, and Jose Urena as those guys are replacing. So the bullpen's going to look completely different. The one thing that jumped out at me about Chris Martin, go back to 2023, over 95 and a third innings, 1.05 ERA, and earned him some down on the ballot Cy Young votes as well. So in Boston, he was doing his thing. The elbow inflammation, that's why he's a buy low here. 38 years old. He did go out and say this is probably going to be his final MLB season. So this is a guy out there who, he's an Arlington native. So he's maybe going out there like, hey, maybe I can be part of something special in Texas because they're looking to win a championship there. Don't get it wrong. They are looking to rebound after a down year. This is a team ready, willing to compete. They're going to be exciting this year, the Rangers.
No doubt about it. There's some rumors around Rangers Twitter that I was seeing that like this is it for the bull. Like they're not going to go get a proven closer, which obviously fans are upset about and not believing that they've done enough, even though the offense looks great. So we'll see. Well, again, just rumors. I do see that is the glaring hole. Like who's closing the games for you? But I like the little signings. Jacob Webb also a short-term, low-cost deal. So not bad. And then to get to Rasmussen, man, before he got hurt, this guy was looking like he, along with Springs, the same year, just like a budding superstar. And then injuries just seem to take all these guys down. So I love the deal. I will be watching him closely. Obviously, when he came back last year, they brought him back slowly and let him just be kind of a bullpen guy, 1 or 2 innings here or there. He may have even opened a few games as well. So to get him back in a full season, he's one I'll be watching closely. And what a rotation, dude. What a rotation. McClanahan coming back. Another year of Taj Bradley. Rasmussen's in there. I know Springs is gone now. Ryan Pepio in there, who's no slouch, another guy who came from the Dodgers that they didn't have room for apparently. And Shane Baz too in the full season. So obviously, cross your fingers and hope that these guys can stay healthy because that could be electric.
I'd imagine that Chris Martin's probably going to close for them. I mean, you look at some of the Texas Twitter, he's going to be involved in high leverage situations. So it could be the setup man. Maybe they go out and get a closer, but he's going to add a veteran presence over there. And look at some of the stats, dude. League best 1.7% walk rate past 3 seasons, 2.6% walk rate, and it's the lowest among pitchers with at least 100 innings. So the concerning thing is, again, the elbow inflammation. There was an IL stint for anxiety as well. So you got to keep that in mind as far as looking at the future of what this bullpen looks like in big leverage situations. Again, we were talking about a team that we're thinking is going to have big moments in October. This is a reunion of sorts for him. They brought him back from Japan in 2018. So look at the stuff here. I mean, this is not going to be, you're not buying the jersey. Maybe you will. Maybe you're a diehard Rangers fan. You're excited about this. But to me, you look at Sean Armstrong, Jacob Webb, Hobie Milner, as you said, all signed to 1-year deals worth $2.5 million or less. This is cost efficient, so the money can be spent elsewhere. And this bullpen could be sneaky good. There's a lot of these pieces you'd be excited about. And it's a completely different look. And they got to be honest, looking at the bullpen last year, there's a reason why it's being completely redone. You know what I mean? Look at Yates and Robertson, Leclerc, Urena. It didn't work out last year. You want a new coat of paint on the team, and it probably starts with the bullpen.
I do wonder if they kick the tires on bringing one of those guys back, though. Like whether it be a Yates or even a Robertson, like to have someone back there that's another option. I mean, you might be right about Martin because those numbers, I mean, they're great. I think it'd be nice to have at least one other option there.
So quickly, there's a Twitter poll and conversation we want to get to. We were meant to get to it when we talk about the Padres, but they're set to spend $2.35 million from their international pool money on Joan De La Cruz. So Devin, I guess we posed this question to everybody. Does that mean they're out on Roki Sasaki?
Yeah, so there was an article written, and it was by someone who covers the Dodgers, basically saying like, hey, this probably is good news for the Dodgers. This probably means the Padres are out on him. And I thought to me, that seemed like a drastic overreaction. So the Padres, their international pool money was, I think, around the 6.2 million, 6.2 million level. So 2.35 million, like, yeah, it takes them down a bit, but doesn't take them out of this to me. Remember, teams are allowed to trade for a certain amount of international money as well. And we know the Padres are in trade discussions. So if Arias gets dealt, Cease gets dealt, would you be shocked to see some international money coming back to San Diego? I would not. The Dodgers have about $5.1 million in that international pool money. So it's not like they're blowing the Padres out of the water right now. And other teams that Sasaki is talking to have more than the Dodgers do. But it's so close. It's either 5.1, 6.2, somewhere in the sevens. Like, these are not super different numbers. Even the Mets, like, they have, I think, $5 million committed to another international prospect. Again, it's not necessarily 100% done, but I think he's going to choose where he wants to go, whether it be because of development or something else, organization. I don't think money's going to factor in too much. Of course, you can sweeten the pot a little bit. I'm waiting to see one of these 7 or 8 teams that have been mentioned that he met with. I'm waiting to see something go across that says they've traded something for international pool money. I think then you can start to maybe read the tea leaves a little bit and say, all right, maybe they're considered a top 3 spot and they're trying to do whatever they can to be the team that gets them. But to me, I thought this was a non-story. And there were several people really digging into it, like, the Padres are out. It's all Dodgers now. I know, I will say, I think the most significant part of the story that I'm reading is, I think more and more day after day, it becomes clearer that the West Coast has a big advantage on Sasaki. And now we're getting a report like every day that apparently another mystery team has been added and got a meeting with him, and another mystery team. So who knows if teams like Seattle or even the Angels on the West Coast have been added to this mix. You never know.
Yeah, and you got to remember, I think you said it best. The money is not what's being done here. If Roki wanted the money, he would have stayed where he was and then waited to be posted in a different way. This is not about money. It's about location. He wants to be in the MLB, and this is his version of a prove it deal. I think the maximum contract will be limited by the international bonus pool, which is a max out of just over $7.5 million. So it's not about the money. So he's going to sign where he wants. We saw this over and over again. This is, Shohei Ohtani did this. So that eventually you do your thing, you make your money down the line. This is not going to be the case here as far as sign the biggest deal. If that was the case, again, he would have waited to not be posted this year. He wants to be in the MLB for a reason, and he's going to be out there, and he's going to go to the team he wants to. They're going to pay him. It's life-changing money for a lot of these guys. And then when he hits free agency after he has some service time here in MLB, then he's going to get paid. So he's betting on himself here. So it's not about the money right now.
Yeah, we're sitting here on January 7th recording this, and will be released January 8th. So as you're listening to this, it's probably about a week away until that January 15th mark hits, where the new kind of international bonus pool periods starts. But by all reports I've seen, don't expect him to sign right on that first day on the 15th. It's more likely somewhere towards the 20th, 25th, something like that. You could maybe expect to see a Roki Sasaki signing, and we're all waiting with bated breath over here.
Yeah, and again, if you look at Yamamoto signing, like, you could say these pitchers are comparable. Yamamoto got $325 million. So there's this is not about money for Roki. He's going to be out there doing his thing, and he's going to prove it. And if he's every bit as advertised, what we see in the numbers and the highlights and what he did over there, it's going to be fun to see. So hopefully he lands on a spot that isn't Tinseltown. Do something different, dude. Don't be Kevin Durant. Go somewhere else.
Yeah, I think there will be loud cheers and applause across the baseball universe outside of LA if he goes anywhere else. Like, I think the rest of the other 29 fan bases are going to come together and high five. We're going to be pretty excited for that, even though everyone wants them on their own team. I'll just mention too, you mentioned Yamamoto. This is a completely different subject. The odds for Cy Young and MVP and Rookie of the Year and all those things have been going around already. And I believe I saw Yamamoto at plus 2,500 for Cy Young. That was my favorite outside bet to possibly take. In New York, and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think we can bet on individual player awards. We can bet on things like win total, over under, things like that, like statistical benchmarks. But I haven't, at least on DraftKings, I don't see any ability in New York to bet on the individual player awards, which stinks because those are the most interesting to me. But for Yamamoto, for me, man, I love those odds. You look at his numbers. If you take the first start out, I know he got hurt, so that's probably why the odds are a little out there. You got to prove that you can pitch a full season first, but throw a little money on there. I don't know. I don't think it's the worst bet in the world.
Yeah, just to speak to the futures, I was going to say I can't speak to DraftKings, but I use FanDuel, and I have not seen those futures being on there. I believe just win totals are on there.
Yeah.
It's always hard to find the awards, because I always want to dabble in those because it's always fun, but they're not here. Maybe it is a New York State thing. I never thought of it that way. I just thought it was a beginning of the season thing. They don't put all the bets in there at one, but yeah, I mean, you see some of these betting slips that you look out there, like they picked rookie of the year, they picked all these things together. Personally, I don't have the patience to wait for those awards. Like, I'm just like,
That's
I'm going to
true.
bet on whatever's on the team, whatever's on the TV right now. And I guess that's what FanDuel or what DraftKings really want here, to get your money, and then eventually you lose it.
It's true. Yeah, I don't do a ton of long-term bets, and I always have that thought too. Like, I'm going to wait how many months to see if I win this? Horse
Unless you
racing,
put
man.
significant money on it. Like, unless you're going to be like, all
Right,
right, I'm going
right.
to put $1,500 on this long-term bet. It's an investment. But I mean, there's
That's
no
why
guarantee, as we see.
that's why going up to Saratoga and watching the horses and putting a bet like
Oh,
every 10 or 15 minutes, just instant gratification or, instant depression.
yeah, I don't
So,
recommend anyone do this, but there is a nature. I mean, you could do this for all sports, but during the baseball season, you can literally bet per at bat, and that makes any game so exciting. You can bet on the next pitch. You can bet on what this guy will do. It is so engaging. I mean, if you have money to be able to do that with, but it's very dangerous if you have an issue of any sort that you wind up being enticed by gambling all your money away. So delete the app if you have an issue, or call the number, dude.
yeah.
All right, well, let's wrap up here. We're going to come around third. We're going to wrap up the episode. A little bit of longer episode. We appreciate you sticking with us, but a lot of good conversation. Let's come around third. All right, as we come around third, like Giancarlo Stanton in the World Series, just ever so slow. Here we are, and Devin, right now we're approaching the weeks mark of spring training, because we are sitting here, as you mentioned, the first week of January. Obviously, spring training in February, warm weather, the crack of the bat. Eventually, the smell of popcorn, beer, and hot dogs at the stadium is just within our reach. I'm excited, man. I'm feeling it. I feel like the offseason's been shorter because we've been covering it with every detail, fine tooth comb, all that kind of good stuff. It's been a lot of fun, and I'm just ready for real baseball to start, real conversations about these teams in the field. I feel like it's coming into view. We're starting to see a little bit with more clarity what these teams will look like. It has me very, very excited because, as we continue to mention, baseball is king over here. I understand people love football, people love basketball, you love your hockey. Baseball is king, dude, and there's nothing like that season. It's fully immersive, watching every single day. The announcers become your family members watching inside your living room. I just can't wait for baseball to be back.
Yeah, I think yesterday MLB posted we're 80 days away from opening day. So spring training is obviously closer, but 80 days, all right. I can get with that. When I lived in Astoria in Queens, there was this little old hardware store that must have been owned by a baseball fan. And every year when spring training was getting closer, he just put this little sign in the window that every day he'd update and said so many days till opening day. It's like a makeshift sign he clearly made. And I always loved the first time I saw that sign, it just almost gave me chills because I knew we were getting there, and I'd take pictures of it and send it to friends of mine, that probably you guys in the fantasy baseball league, looking forward to that. So the fact that spring training and fantasy baseball drafts and then eventually opening day, we're going to get there, and then we'll have it every single day. We're getting there. We're getting closer and closer every day.
Yes, I agree, dude. I'm very, very excited. That is a great story with that sign, and maybe I'll do something like that in my office. It would just give you a glimmer of hope, like looking out the window and watching the sun come out. But there was conversation on the X machine that you put out there. Or would people be interested in potentially fantasy baseball talk, the draft talk? And I saw that it was engaged with that. There would be. So you guys can look forward to the future. We have our draft beginning of March. So maybe Devin and I will do, I can't guarantee we're going to spend a whole episode talking all fantasy baseball. There'll always be that fantasy baseball spin on things. Of course, we'll talk about our league. We'll reference our league as we did last year. we want to remain the spirit of the show, talking about baseball in total. But I think it'd be fun to do a little bit of that draft preview, buy low, maybe guys to avoid in the draft if you guys are interested in doing stuff like that. Just out of sheer excitement. Our draft is pretty early, and I looked at it and I was like, oh, it's earlier than ever. I think we did it in the same exact week last year. So it gets earlier and earlier because we're older and we have other responsibilities, trying to find a way to get everybody together in a room. Because if you guys are in a fantasy baseball league, my recommendation, among a lot of things, if you want feedback about how to run a successful league, whether as commissioner or just someone a part of it, get in person together. Go find someone's house to be together, get some food, and buy a live draft board. Turn off your cell phone as far as conversation with other people. If you need for research, that's fine. And just be there in the moment. Spend 4 hours, 5 hours doing a fantasy baseball draft. It's quickly become secondary to Christmas, dude. It's one of those days that you just look forward to. It's so much fun. And if you haven't done it, and most of you guys, if you're listening here, hour 30 into our show, I'm sure you are participating in fantasy baseball in some capacity. But if you have reservations like, oh, it's a long haul, I don't want to focus on it, find a group of people. They become your people, and it can become a pastime. We're approaching one of those things, like our season is approaching. We're over a decade old at this point, almost 15 years. It's eventually going to get to a point where we're going to be doing this for 30 years. I know our football league it's insane. Our football league is old enough to drink, right? Lucky, good, and all knowing.
Not well, depending on if you're like drinking in the basement or out at a bar. It'll be 18 next. Oh, actually, so we missed 1 year. This was the 17th season. It's been ongoing for against 18 years or so. So, I mean, I guess the old school drinking rules years and years ago were 18. But and by the way, our draft being, I think, March 2nd, I don't consider that super early. Because I've seen people on Twitter already posting things about first-year player drafts or those long-term drafts where you can just like take hours to do your pick, like not even together. I don't know. I've never done one of those. But I think if we do an episode and spend like 30 minutes just kind of going over some of our favorite picks and, like you said, buy low and all this stuff after the drafts, the episode after the draft. I don't want to do pre, because then I'm going to be afraid I'm going to like give some strategy away to not only you, but other people in our league that listen. So, I don't want to do that.
No, it's a very good point. And it's one of those things, again, if you have reservations about getting together, pull the trigger on doing it, guys. Find some people that scratch the itch. I convinced a group of people that did not want to play fantasy baseball. And Devin was one of them. He loves baseball. Obviously, he's on here talking 51 episodes in, but you had reservations about joining another one because you were in a competitive rotisserie league that was, part of what you did. And you're like, I can't take another one on. And we built something special with this head-to-head for the family.
That, and also I had tried myself to make one several times over the years before you got me in yours that just would like last half a season and then burn out. So that was in the back of my mind too. But yeah, thank God I did, because I mean, I'm 4 titles deep now and no end in sight.
Yeah, I need one this year. That'd be great. But we appreciate you guys joining us here. We hope that you guys had a happy new year and you guys are staying warm wherever you are, or maybe you guys are in a warm weather. I mean, Florida is cold nowadays, so who knows? But make sure you guys follow us on the X Machine and on Twitter at TableSetters Pod. And join the conversation. Let us know what you thought about the episode, what you thought about some of our takes here. Maybe you believe Luis Arias is that transcendent player and we're just down on him for no reason. Maybe you haven't watched the Prince Fielder highlights on YouTube. Maybe you haven't had the ability to check out what he's been doing all those years ago because it's so long ago at this point. My recommendation, Devin, before we go, everyone type in Prince Fielder on YouTube and watch this dude play baseball. He's different. Prince Fielder was amazing.
Yeah, and just one more thing from me. Pete Alonso, if you're listening, I know you're probably not, but if you're listening, 4 years, $92 million, big escalators. Let's get it done. I want to talk about it next week on episode 52.
So we'll be back next week talking all things baseball, maybe Pete Alonso signing, maybe not, and we'll talk to you after.
High fly ball into right field. She is gone in a year that has been so